All right. Well, welcome everyone to our panel discussion on how to amplify your role in the local tourism ecosystem. My name is Gabi Duarte, Program Manager for Travel Oregon's Global Sales Team. Today, you will hear from three industry professionals just like you about how local relationships and connectivity in the tourism ecosystem has opened doors for their businesses and organizations. Not only have these tourism relationships offered successful avenues for growth, but these partnerships have translated through the COVID crisis and beyond into the next phase of rebuilding. We hope that this discussion will inspire you to look inward and consider where your business or organization lives in your own local tourism ecosystem and inspires you with key takeaways to enhance your own destination. We would love to hear questions from our audience, so please put them in the Q&A box as you think of them. Don't worry about waiting until the end, and we'll leave the chat box open for conversations and key takeaways. All right, let's get started with our panelists. First off, we have certified sommelier, French wine scholar, and one of Wine Enthusiast's top 40 under 40 tastemakers of 2020, also a recent winemaker, Siobhan Ball of Dirty Radish. Welcome, Siobhan. Can you tell us a little bit more? Good morning. Hello. Can you tell us a little bit more about your work and your role in the tourism ecosystem?
Yeah, I have a company called Dirty Radish. So I take people on wine tours very specifically to two regions, Beaujolais in France and the Willamette Valley right here in Oregon. I also do some consulting. So I do a lot of hospitality consulting with wineries, but my main focus is the tourism and doing wine tours here in Oregon.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. Before making his home in Oregon, our next panelist honed his boutique hotel development and management skills in Australia, Spain, and Greece, adding to his over 20 years in the industry. Please welcome David Mogg of Cascadia Hospitality, developing Jupiter Hotel and Jupiter Next. Welcome, David. Could you tell us a little bit more about your work and your role in the tourism ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I am one of the co-founders of Cascadia Hospitality. And so we are a consultation and hospitality management company that really kind of works with small boutique hotels and restaurants. My role specifically in that is I really focus on the revenue management, sales, and marketing. And so a lot of that, when we're talking smaller independent hotels and restaurants, is a collaborative effort with other businesses in the region to really kind of pool resources together to really maximize our marketing.
Excellent. Perfect. Great to have you. All right. And not only has our last panelist created quite a legacy in Oregon's tourism industry, strengthening local economies and benefiting residents and visitors alike, but she's created a similar legacy, completing two 50K ultra marathons. Please welcome Billy Moser of Travel Portland. Billy, welcome. Could you tell us a little bit more about your work and your role in the tourism ecosystem?
Yeah, thanks, Gabi. Hi, everybody. So great to be here at this year's Governor's Conference. Welcome to Portland. I really started out in, the hotel business and the food and beverage business. And so now I do mostly community engagement along with international affairs at Travel Portland. But I think having started out in smaller independent hotels and in food and beverage, it just immediately was all about partnership. And even when I wasn't in the tourism industry, I think we need to remember that I worked in arts administration for 9 years. That was all about partners as well. So I think it is just where we are and how we put it all together and recognizing the environment that we're in. So I'm happy to be here today to talk about it.
Perfect. Well, actually, Billy, let's start off with you with our first question. As a DMO of the largest city in Portland, what is a major role that you play in partnerships?
Yeah, I think it is to know partners, first of all, to know them, to build relationships with them in order to understand what they need. And then I think it is the DMO's role to connect that, to be the connector. It is really about diving in deep, in a sense, into the individual segments of our industry, because a hotel might need something different than a tour operator, but there is then a meeting point, and we are the ones that are going to find that meeting point. And we are the ones to come up with the opportunity. If we don't have the opportunity, then we are again the one to introduce the people to each other in order to build the relationships and to move forward. So I think a good example is before COVID, we put together the Receptive Tour Operator Summits, where we brought in receptive operators and then really brought the industry that was ready for that specific work, to take advantage of that specific work, to the receptive operators. It wasn't for everybody. It will never be for everybody. Nothing will ever be for everybody, but to find the right partners for the right opportunity and then create those opportunities.
And you were sort of the glue between those two groups, right? You had your own existing relationships with those receptive operators and with your partners that you work with in the DMO space. So you guys were able to be kind of that glue. Is that right?
Absolutely. And actually, our relationships have to be strong. However, they are much stronger if all of our partners have the same strong relationships, right? So how do you nurture that? Where do you start with that? And how do you nurture it in order to become? Because as we know, in this example of a receptive tour operator, which is a sales function, we are not selling anything. The DMO doesn't sell anything, but the hotel and the tour operator and the others are actually selling. So that relationship has to be created, nurtured, and fulfilled in order for all parties to be successful.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, let's turn to Siobhan. So going from the DMO perspective to a business, a tour operator, Siobhan, how has engaging with your regional and local DMOs helped your business?
Working with, Travel Oregon, obviously, and Travel Portland has been really helpful to my business as far as giving me opportunities to meet with people that I normally wouldn't meet with through my business. And then just creating these relationships. I'm pretty lucky. I've lived here my whole life. So I've created relationships over the last 20 years with people that I work with now. So it's a little bit different, but it definitely creates a much more cohesive work situation for me. And then it also translates to my guest experience in that way. It's very, very useful.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, engagement and partnership doesn't just happen at the DMO level. Hotels leverage these relationships as well. So turning to David, what is some advice that you would offer other hoteliers on how to engage with local businesses?
Yeah, I think the first thing to really think about is being strategic. You want to really understand what it is that your guests that are staying with you want. And so I'd say the first thing to do is really engage your front desk. I think every hotel, and this is not just when you're looking for local businesses to partner with, every hotel should be asking 2 questions as frequently as possible when it comes to their guests staying with them. And that's really going to be, what brings you here? And how did you hear about us? I mean, if you understand that, you're really getting a good segmentation of the demographics of people staying with you, and you're hearing where your marketing dollars should be best spent. I mean, you're seeing the channels that are bringing people to you. But when you have an understanding of your basic demographics and what people want, I mean, that's going to make it much easier to then start looking at the local businesses around you and seeing where those fit and where there's going to be easy wins for, good collaboration. And this can be super simple. I mean, you could just offer a local discount program with these businesses where they show a key card and they get 1% off. You could do collaborative packages together with them, or you could even stock their items in your hotel. It's up to you. No business is not going to want to hear from you. You've got tourists in your building ready to go out there and see different things and spend money. So don't be afraid at that point. Just start going out there, but really focus on the right, businesses to reach out with, and at least initially.
And what do you feel that partnership and relationship does for your business? Is it kind of that connection between really knowing what your clients are looking for and being able to kind of serve it up to them?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to enhance their experience, obviously, but also a lot of people, experiential travel is really that hot topic that everybody's looking for right now. They want authenticity. They want to have an experience. They want to, whether it's on Instagram or not, they want to have memories. And so if they're looking for specific things and you're making that journey for them easier, and they're seeing that it really is hyper local and that relationship between the business and the hotel feels authentic, that authenticity is going to translate across, and the memories that they create are going to the good memories that are attached to your businesses. So it's just going to bring that authenticity and, enhance people's experiences as they travel.
That's really great. Thank you. Turning to Billy too, from the DMO side, some destinations many destinations have faced cutbacks on visitor centers and hotel concierge programs. How is Travel Portland closing the gap of the visitor experience using partnerships in Portland?
Yeah, it's been a obviously tough time, as we all know, and Travel Portland did have to close the visitor center back in March, and we have not reopened it. So we are doing some comprehensive thinking, I would call it right now, and also are thinking about, the short term as well as the long term. In short term, we have been able to partner with the Portland Business Alliance, which is the local, Portland chamber, and their partner organization, which is Clean and Safe, which is the enhanced service district of downtown. And they have downtown sidewalk ambassadors. And that also had to stop a year ago. But this is starting back up in July, and we are engaging with them. We're partnering with them to enhance that program, because it is just in the enhanced service district, which is downtown. But of course, for us, we want to go where visitors are. So we are partnering to make it bigger. Visitors will be at the lot at Seidel Yards. Hopefully, you saw that on the break, and other places like that. The Oregon Convention Center, there will be groups there. So how do we get the ambassadors there? And so that's a partnership we've always worked closely with, but now it has become deeper, stronger, more intentional, more strategic, to use David's words. But I also want to mention our wonderful partners in the Portland region, Oregon's Mountain Territory. And I hope that I can speak for them well, because they have had a fantastic program for many years, and it's their industry fame tours. And my staff here at Travel Portland was always attending and always came back, raving. And it was in the past 2 times a year. It was a full day excursion. It focused on the shoulder season. It focused on one community, and they did a fantastic job. So what they're doing now, what they've done now because of COVID, they put it virtual. They made it a subscription box model. So they came up with 3 programs, each focused in one of their regions. They have 3 regions within the Oregon Mountain Territory, so Clackamas County. And each is, everybody who's attending gets this box first, right? So fun. And that was one of their goals. They definitely wanted to bring fun back to tourism. It was a very hard time, negative time. They brought fun back, while, of course, making sure people are learning, the visitor-facing staff is learning what's going on with, wildfire closures, for example. This boat ramp is open, this boat ramp is closed, and you might have sent people there in the past, but this one is open. So they've had multiple goals with this, and it's just been really successful. And I'm so proud of them that they've been able to take this program virtual, and good on you, Oregon Mountain Territory.
And that's so excellent too, because we are so often focused on the fun of the visitors that are coming, or the guests that are coming into our destination. But to have kind of a fun piece of a fun way to partner with others in your area, in the industry is really exciting. And that's a great model and a great way to pull people in. So I love to hear it. Thank you. So turning to Siobhan, as a guide business, what's an easy way to promote small businesses and out of the way locations in your region?
For me, that's my whole job. My whole job with taking people on wine tours is to take them to the place that they would never have found. Willamette Valley has well over 700 wineries in it. It's very hard, and we can only basically do 3 in a day. And so I try to find the places that they're never going to find, or the wine doesn't really get outside of Oregon, or really has a very small niche markets. And so that brings them that sense of that pioneer spirit that we have here in Oregon. People really love to see this sort of bare bones, like mom and pop places, which is what gets those other larger places where they are are today. We've got people like Ponzi, who 50 years ago started this thing, and now they've been bought by Bollinger. So we see this progress, but where does it all start? And so I'm taking people to those specific places, more also to show these beautiful sweeping vistas, which Oregon makes that really easy for me because it's every other corner. But I realized that, it's my job to really be on the pulse of what's happening in the Willamette Valley specifically, and to translate that to my guest experience. It's really about their whole day and their whole experience. And I'm able to connect them with these incredible winemakers that they would never have known and create these long-lasting relationships with them, because I already have a relationship with them. And so I don't take anyone to any place that I've never been before. I always have been there multiple times. I'm a, club member at that place or whatever it may be, to really give a true experience. That's what I want to do. I want people to experience it as if they were going on a tour with me, like your friend, and that's what happens. And that way, when we go to these places, when we walk in, it really is truly that sort of relationship. And that really does make a huge difference. It's not the typical thing. And I feel like that makes people feel like they want to come back again and again. And that's what we want. We want them to keep coming back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's excellent. You said something that stuck with me too, prior to the panel, that you don't just, as a guide, you don't just bring visitors to a location, but you guide them through the people and the process, which helps them to have a strong connection to their trip. So I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I think there's the little things, like the details that sometimes we forget, as I've been tasting wine for a really long time. So it's no big deal to me to spit the wine or to pour the wine out. And I have to explain that to people at the beginning. I always explain it that it's not going to be offensive to anyone if you dump the wine. You don't have to get drunk. It's going to be okay. And explaining that to them. I actually explain more about hazelnuts than I explain about anything else.
Because it's hard to talk about the valley and the wine without also talking about the hazelnuts, right?
I mean, we talk about hazelnuts because we see these trees so much and people are just flabbergasted by how many hazelnuts we have. I have to know all of the mountains. I love bringing people from other states, and they'll look at Council Crest and they're like, that's a cool mountain. And I'm like, turn around. And they're like, oh my God. So
this meeting
really
is being recorded.
knowing that the Jefferson Mountain is the mountain in the Paramount pictures. I don't know if everybody knows that. And another thing they really love are the Christmas tree farms here in Oregon. They don't see them as Christmas tree farms. So knowing everything, not just about wine, but knowing about the nurseries and the farms and the cheeses, it's really important. And that, again, creates these relationships where people are getting things that they normally wouldn't have. And they just, again, keep wanting to come back again and again.
I love that. That's so great. Thank you. Well, this question is going to be for everyone. We know tourism in Oregon has faced a number of challenges over the past few years. So I'd love it if you all could share some examples from your organization that show why relationships are vitally important for solving problems. David, let's start with you first.
Sure. So for anyone that's not familiar here in Portland with the Jupiter Hotel, it's a independent, locally owned hotel that's on the east side of the river. And when they started up, the entire brand has really built itself around the collaboration and work it's done within the businesses in our local area. So we've done a lot of really, really fun events here. It's a event party-filled hotel, but we've been able to enjoy these relationships over the last 16, 17 years as this area has become more and more developed, and more businesses and restaurants have kind of lifted themselves up. So what we found was, speaking of COVID, last year, COVID hits, suddenly entire year's worth of business has been wiped off in less than a week. And, everybody's scrambling to figure out what to do. Now, if you cast your mind back to that time, a lot of small businesses were finding ways to, do little gift cards, anything to get some money in the coffers at that time, right then and there. what we found was that the business model for hotels here in Portland and most of the US, suddenly our business travel was gone. Suddenly our leisure travel was gone. It became hyper local. So you had people quarantining that were frontline workers. You had family members coming to visit their family. You had people losing their mind over the same four walls that they'd been sitting in and just needing a staycation for the weekend. And what we found was that just passively, the neighborhood really supported the Jupiter. We saw people consciously choosing our hotel to stay at because they knew it was a local small business and neighborhood hotel. And so that had just come organically from the fact that the messaging that had been going out, we've never changed that marketing. It's always been our story is about our neighborhood. But on the other side, talking about, engaging and working with relationships, at the start of this year, what we did was we actually reached out to Gabe Rucker, who had Le Pigeon, which is a neighboring restaurant to us, and to Hey Love, who is a bar and restaurant in our lobby of the Jupiter Next. And we kind of pitched them this idea of, hey, what if we take half of our hotel, turn those floors into like an in-room dining experience where you could have a 4-course meal, have some drinks, and then stay the night. And I mean, this took a lot of trust. None of these restaurants were open at the time. So, there was a lot of hard costs involved to get this started. And, it hadn't really been tested. So, everybody was like, we'll take care of each other if it all falls apart. Let's give it a shot. So we took 3 weekends, so 4 weekends, I should say, 3 nights, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We had basically 30 covers for the whole night. So it was one floor we did 15, another floor we did another 15 at 6 and 8 p.m. And, tested it out, ran it, and within the first week, for 4 weekends, we sold out. So we decided to extend it for 8 weeks. And the thing was a huge success. It was incredible seeing people getting dressed up to then go into a hotel room to have their dinner. And so it was just beautiful. But, as far as financially successful, it took a lot of, trust between these 3 businesses to be able to take the plunge. But I mean, we made over $210,000 from 8 weeks of weekend work. So that's how successful it was, which was pivotal at that time, because this was February of this year. We had just gone through another shutdown in the October previously, and winter. We didn't know how we were going to come out of summer at the start of this year. So something like that, you couldn't create something like that without a level of trust that's come from those relationships being built. So, it's really important to take care, whether there's small wins that you work together with, or whether, they're a big win like this was. These things only happen when those businesses trust each other.
Yeah, I love that you said that. We all decided that we would take care of each other if it didn't go the way that it was planned. So that's an incredible amount of trust.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really cool, but there's a lot of logistical work and costs involved in doing it. Yeah. And we didn't have a bunch of extra there's no marketing dollars during COVID. It was just scrap together what we can and let's figure it out. And it was massive, and people just loved it, and they really came out to support it. Like, the feedback we got was huge, and the PR that we got from it when nothing else is really happening. I mean, you couldn't pay for that during normal times.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you. What a great example. So I'll turn to Billy. How about you? Some examples of how your organization has partnered with others to help solve problems.
Yeah, I think it comes down to existing relationships. And then, especially during this time, the relationships you already had and the trust that you built before a crisis like this just really pays off. It really paid off, right, for all of us. And I think that also speaks to that we need to invest in the relationships prior to the crisis. But I also, so I think it's about that, is that you are coming back to your relationships that you've already built, and obviously you're going to build new ones as well. And sometimes we know the silver linings are actually that it is that your relationships are stronger. So one thing that happened is that before COVID, the Portland Lodging Alliance really started with a downtown cleanup, for the hospitality workers to be part of that. And it really started before COVID with one general manager. And through that, he rallied the other general managers. And so there was something that they were, the hotels were working on together. And there's the the Portland Lodging Alliance. And so, of course, then during COVID and then this complete shutdown, and then what happened, especially in our central city, that alliance became stronger, worked closer with Solve and us and PBA again. All of us just became more engaged in these relationships in order to move a solution forward. So, all of us started volunteering, which was so lovely to just have something positive to do together, be here for our community, be here for Portland. But it was really coming from the Portland Lodging Alliance together with Solve, and then really Travel Oregon, Travel Portland. All of us were supporters in that, and that continues. So I think it just goes back to going to your relationships and figuring out what needs to be done, recognizing the need at the point, and making it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Siobhan, same question to you. An example that shows why relationships have been vitally important for solving problems.
Yeah, of course, with the pandemic and everything happening and being shut down, wineries had to pivot like everybody else. And it was really great to be able to just jump right into helping with Zoom, virtual tastings and getting people set up for that. Creating those relationships worked both ways. So if I'm doing the Zoom, that's good for me. If whatever winery I'm working with is getting that bit of PR is working out for them. So it was really easy for us to just jump right in because I knew about these wines. There didn't have to be a lot of big conversation about it because I'd already had these relationships with them. And then being able to work with some of the nonprofits in town as well to do, gift baskets with wine so that people could still make their money because there were obviously no galas this last year. So we were kind of pivoting in that way. And it really just all sort of seamlessly worked in my world, because for me, at least, obviously people keep drinking even in a pandemic, if not more.
Yeah.
And they had nowhere to go. So just fine. As long as we could get the wine to them, we were fine. So it all worked out quite well. I'm really lucky in that way.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. Starting from that foundation of those relationships that you already had on deck.
Yes.
Kind of helped move you through that crisis. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, these relationships, I feel like we talk about these relationships with each other. I feel like it's so important, especially with our community, Oregon, Portland, so small in the grand scheme of things. It really is important. I can't believe how many phone numbers I have in my phone. Like you can really just call somebody up if you need something. That's really important. It's not just like an email or circumventing from someone else. It's like really direct relationships with each other. And I really appreciate that because it helps, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And especially a relationship where you have a direct cell phone number. I mean, that's not, that feels like a little bit deeper of a connection, right? So you're not just talking about maybe superficial relationships. You're talking about ones that have been authentic, that you've really put forth some effort over the years.
There's something different about a text message question, asking it means something a little bit more than in an email.
That personal connection.
Really personal. I think that's super important to creating these relationships.
That's great. Thank you. These are great examples. So just a reminder to the audience too, if you have any questions along the way for our panelists, please drop them into the Q&A box. Next question that I have for all of you again, tourism is a relationship-based business. What are some of your best tips for fostering those partnerships in this tourism ecosystem? So let's start with Billy. How about you? Best tips for fostering partnerships?
Yeah, I mentioned one already, and that is that I used the word invest in your relationships prior to a crisis, and the investment is the time. And I think to be conscientious about that building relationships and nurturing relationships take time, and that we do need to do that. So I think that's probably number one tip. But the second tip is that recognizing what a partnership is. And a partnership is to set up a win, or it's a win-win, right? Minimum, two partners. So it's not partnership, it's just a ship. If you're by yourself, I just thought of that. But if you know, like all the example that you've now just had, or that there's multiple partners, right? Then it has to be a win-win-win-win-win for each partner. That doesn't mean that each wins the same, you know, like really, really high up. But nobody can be deeply disappointed and lose out, because then it's not going to work. It's not going to work for the future. So I think the conscientious thinking in each partnership, what is that win? And I don't have to win the most, but how will this work for the overarching strategic goal, as David said earlier, to use that word. So I think it is really about not just expecting it to work, you know, just thinking it's all going to work, is to be intentional about it. Those are my top two. And then another one is obviously face-to-face. Well, we've done really well, as we're saying, over Zoom. But having nurtured the relationship prior to the Zoom times made Zoom work, better. And it did work. You know, we have done quite a few, you know, trade shows, as you want to call them, marketplaces, one-on-one meetings in this environment. And they worked because with many of these clients, we had relationships prior. So I think it is about really being intentional about relationships in order to be successful. And I've said that before. So those are my three.
Yeah, that's great. I actually have a follow-up question from the audience. Do you have any suggestions, Billy, as a DMO, for engaging local partnerships in a resource-deficient community? This person says that their city has specifically 400 residents. Do you have any thoughts or tips for engaging in partnerships there?
Yeah, I would need to know probably a little bit more to understand, number one, the goal, and so the first thing to do is an analysis. Where are we? Where do we, you know, what's the desired outcome? And then I actually think at some point, one-on-one outreach, engagement one-on-one to create the larger community. It has to start one-on-one, but I'd be happy to have a conversation with this person to just dig a little bit deeper if that is helpful. To understand, because not one situation is the same as the other. I think that's what we talked about earlier. You have to understand the environment and where is each partner in order to meet the partner where they are, where that person is. And so, so that's what I can say generally speaking, but I would be very happy to have a conversation.
I think that's really helpful. And then too, just thinking about what you said before about budgeting time to collaborate and have partnerships. And sometimes it makes me think about literally scheduling time in my calendar, like making it so important that it's something that is on paper and you're going to work towards. So I think that's another great piece as well.
And I think, you know, when we talk about resources, or as this question uses the word resource deficient, you know, we as a society tend to think of resources, always financial resources first. But it's actually more than that. You need human resources for financial resources to work or not to work. So I think that that takes a little bit of thought as well, as to how actually make it happen. It's not always about money. And it's obviously we don't all have limitless time as well as the human resource, but it has to start with the human resource. It has to start with the time.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, let's turn to David. How about you? Some of your best tips for fostering partnerships in the tourism ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually piggyback off of what Billy said there about there being win-wins. Your easiest way to develop a successful relationship is to have a successful business arrangement. And so looking for those win-wins, it can really be brought into doing some market research. And I mean, some of the best, the finances and best companies that are going to be doing that are your DMOs. So if you don't have a relationship existing with them, try to. But if you don't have a contact, go on their Instagram, have a look at what they're promoting out there. If they're pushing things on Instagram, be it, outdoor adventures, makers, food, beer, wine. They've probably done a ton of market research into that's why tourists are going there. And to maybe answer the guests that posed that question to them, even if you don't have a DMO pushing your region because it is so small, maybe look around some of the natural landscapes that are popular out there and see what people are tagging in Instagram. If you're seeing that there's a ton of people tagging a particular region that's right next to you or near you, maybe there's a tour operator out there that's going to be really popular that you could do a partnership with. Maybe people love to camp and picnic, and there you can work with some local food places to put a little collaborative package together like that. But if you know what your people that are staying with you or coming to your region want, you can then strategically go out and find those partnerships, which are going to be easy wins.
That's great. That is everyone should be writing down, check your DMO's Instagram as one key takeaway for the day. That is such an easy thing to do. That's such a great idea, David. Thank you.
Yeah.
Siobhan, to you then, do you have any great tips for fostering relationships in your tourism ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, but Billy and David said are like, I can't really say much more, but I would say my philosophy is a closed mouth doesn't get fed. So don't be afraid to create the relationship out of thin air. You never know who people are going to be or what they can offer. I work with people that now I realize that they have farm animals and we can do that. There's a winery that lets only us hike down to a waterfall that nobody else gets access to. And these are things that I just have to ask, what's special about your place or what makes you unique? What do you want to show off and highlight to these particular guest experiences? And getting to know people in that way. So I don't do anything really cookie cutter. I really make things very specific for each of my guests. And that way I can pair them up with the right place. But I ask a lot of questions and I talk to a lot of people and I just try to create those relationships wherever I can.
I love this. These are excellent tips. I've got schedule some time, check your DMO's Instagram and ask. That is so easy to remember. Thank you. Those are great tips, everybody. All right, I've got one more question slated before I turn to, we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A as well. But last one from me, give us an example of a really great tourism relationship or partnership that has benefited your business or organization the most. And we'll start with David.
Yeah, so when I started at the Jupiter, we actually did an analysis. We decided to break apart and look at where all of our business had historically been coming from and just, figure out the demographics that were staying with our hotel. And there were a bunch there that we knew of and we had incredible existing relationships with, but there were a few outliers that we saw opportunities with, and one of those actually was the motorcycle community. We were seeing that motorcyclists were staying at our hotel and choosing our hotel quite frequently, more than what you would suspect. And so we kind of looked around our area and realized there was a bunch of low-hanging fruit. We had a bunch of people in the hotel ourselves that work there that are big, enthusiasts in motorcycle, but we had CC's, which is a motorcycle cafe a few blocks away from us, that we'd already been doing stuff with just collaboratively on the side, but we decided to, more consciously engage with them and we started partnering. And CC's actually runs the One Show, which is a huge motorcycle event that they run in February. So, you couldn't pick a better time for a hotel to want to fill its doors. But this is the first one that kicks off the season. And in 2019, I think they had over 50,000 people attend. So it's a big event. And so we were selling out our hotel, having sponsors in one of the buildings while motorcycle builders in another. And we just started to continue to see more and more brands coming to us as they recognized that some of their colleagues in the field were utilizing the hotel. So come 2019, we actually got an RFP that came to the city for Harley Davidson. And these guys were about to launch their new electric motorcycle and they needed a property for 2 weeks where they were going to bring in international journalists to see these bikes, see the demo of them, and then take them for a ride. And this was like cycling every 2 days. So, you couldn't ask for better PR in a hotel. And so we threw our hat into the ring and we'd never bid on anything this big before. This was your typical convention hotel kind of a lift. And they responded back to us. They really liked the look of the building, but they asked us, why do you think you could possibly do this? And, those prior events and kooky, crazy things that we've done with all these other brands, we're able to list, look, we did all these different things. We know the general needs of what motorcycle companies need when they bring their bikes here. We believe in this, we love this, and we got the contract. And I mean, without talking about specific dollars, when we got that contract, it was our sales budget for the quarter in 1 2-week thing, not to mention the PR that we got from something like 60 different journalists staying at our hotel and riding the bikes to and from the hotel. So, if you authentically go after these relationships with, partners that, fit your brand and continue to nurture them, big things can happen, even if you are a small business.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great example. Billy, how about you? Any great relationships or partnerships that have benefited your organization?
So I would like to say that to that question, that is that I believe having partnerships and relationships with the lodging industry, understanding how hotels work, and also now the short-term short-term rental environment. And the reason I'm saying that is obviously I feel so lucky that I got to start out in the hotel industry, because as a DMO, understanding how hotels work, how hotels need to meet their goals, their sales goal for a quarter, as David just mentioned, and what the role is within the entire environment. The lodging industry just drives so much of it. It's not that we need every single segment of our industry to be successful, but we do have to remember that our lodging taxes or our tourism improvement district fees are coming through the lodging industry. So it is upon us to understand that. And the best way to do this is to have really close partners in that industry. So I can say, David, how does that work? Because you know what? When I started out, there were no online travel agents, right? Just didn't exist. The way the evolution, the way it works, the way it's getting faster and faster, as we heard in the keynote, everything is very important for us to keep track, so that the relationships that I have with a few very, very close hotel partners has been so beneficial, because I can truly call him up and say, David, how does that work? And the same on the, in Portland with Host to Host, that's the short-term rental organization. We have very close relationships, and it has been so beneficial to understand that, mutually beneficial as it needs to be. And that would be my advice there. So for DMOs to understand that and really make sure we understand what's going on in the lodging industry as a whole, and the challenges and the future and the trends and all of that.
That's great. Thank you. Siobhan, do you have a great partnership that you'd like to highlight?
I have great partnerships on the, small level. So mine are really personal. They're with the winemakers and owners themselves. But it means that at the last moment, I can make a phone call to take, when Travel Portland calls me and asks me to take Philippe Oran, the chief editor of the Michelin Guides, on a wine tour, I can just call them in my phone because they're there. So I can call Beaufrere or Beckham Estate or whomever. I have a really great relationship with Red Hills Market in Dundee. They make all of our lunches. They're locally sourced and seasonal. So that makes my job a little bit easier. And really, honestly, the relationships I have with people, they just make me look really good. Like, I don't know, like, how else to say, like, I make them look good. They make you look good. It's like a perfect little thing, but they're really just very small, genuine relationships.
That's really incredible. Great. Thank you. Okay, I know we're coming here towards the end of our session. We do have one question from Aaron. I believe this is towards Siobhan, but if our other panelists have anything to offer, that'd be great. How do you recommend balancing the need to support local small businesses in order to showcase unique, authentic experiences, while not overwhelming these same small businesses with large group sizes or over tourism?
I don't think with the post-pandemic that there's anything such as over tourism. They're happy to take people, especially right now before we get into harvest and we're all busy again. As far as large groups go, I don't personally take a lot of large groups, but it's really, again, that relationship and calling and knowing. I know which places are going to be able to accommodate a large group versus not. I know which places are, going to do that sort of do it well, if you will. As of right now, there's not a lot of people taking large groups with the restrictions still in place. But I would say, once again, it's really truly creating these relationships. And as a tour operator, I get to know my guests before they come on my tours. I don't have an easy button. You can't just book online. You have to have a conversation with me because I want to know you and I want you to know me and what we're going to do for the day. I cannot express enough how often I have to tell people to wear proper footwear and raincoats when they're coming to Oregon, but it's what I have to do. So I really do have these genuine conversations with not only my guest for their experience, but also getting to know what places do what things well, because not every place is the same. And so really creating those relationships, again, is really important so that I know what I'm bringing my guests to.
And it sounds like you really, as an operator, have a lot of control over a number of guests you're bringing and where you're taking them to. And these relationships are so close that you would imagine if someone said, hey, this is too many people on a Saturday or something, you would help, be able to adjust that tour. Maybe, okay, we'll come on a Monday, or fewer people.
Yeah. And you want to do that not only for the person that you're taking them to, the partnership that you've created, but for your guest experience as well. Large groups are fine, but I'm not going to take them to a place that's like literally someone's house, which happens a lot in Oregon wine. But I find other ways to highlight those wines for larger groups, whether it's giving them my top 10 that maybe we didn't get to go see, creating a case of wine for them. So I'm still giving them that information or giving them that lead to those other small places, but I'm not going to be disingenuous by taking them to a place that doesn't work for a large group. And I wouldn't overwhelm a place with that. But again, when you have their phone number in your phone, you can send a text and ask these questions very genuinely. And maybe you get something that you normally wouldn't have gotten had you sent that email or gone through the direct route, or the other route of getting to them.
Absolutely. And I would say this highlights another feature of why it's so important to take a guide on experiences through Oregon too, is they have this knowledge and these partnerships. So thank you so much. Okay, I think that wraps it up. If we have, maybe that looks like in the chat as well. I think that's all the questions that we have time to answer though today. I just want to give a big thank you to our panelists today, Siobhan, Billy, and David. Thank you for your knowledge, sharing with the industry. And I look forward to seeing you all at some of the next sessions throughout the Governor's Conference. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.